2:20, and those sessions are pretty tight. So thanks for coming, guys. Let's talk about Android development. Yeah, what's new? So, all right. So my name is Landry. I'm a technical evangelist at Microsoft, and I'm a cross-platform developer. I basically do, of course, I do Windows. I also build for iOS. I build for Android. I use cross-platform technologies as well, like Cordova, Xamarin. And today I want to talk to you about a pretty cool topic. It's basically about the cloud. How, if you want to build a good application, of course, you're going to need to use some kind of cloud backend sooner or later. Because I don't know about you, but tip calculators have been done, and that's pretty much the only kind of useful app that I can think of that doesn't need a cloud backend. If you want to make any kind of money, you'll need some kind of cloud. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is what Microsoft can do for you as an Android developer, as a native Android developer. So we're going to stay in your tools, in your language, and we have native SDKs for you. And of course, everything I'm going to show also applies if you're also an iOS developer, or for a Windows developer, or if you build web apps as well for the web, for mobile web. But definitely today, all the demos are going to be about Android because this is Droidcon after all. So you can reach me. All my info is here. I would encourage you come to the front. The screen is not super big, so I want to make sure that you can see the code I'm going to be showing because I do have some demos. And then my contact info is here. My blog is ageofmobility.com. I've been doing mobility for about 13 years now, so that's basically 5 years before the iPhone even appeared. And you can follow me on Twitter at ActiveNick. First of all, a lot of people came to our booth and were wondering, like, what's Microsoft doing at Droidcon, really? And the bottom line is, we love Android developers. First of all, we love Android itself. I don't know if you've looked. If you search for Microsoft Corporation in a Google Play Store, you will find quite a few apps. And they're all extremely popular apps with millions of downloads. And there's a lot of stuff out there, from Office Mobile to Remote Desktop to Xbox One Smart Glass. There's a lot of apps basically out there. And yeah, we love Android. It's just another platform for us to reach users. We want to reach everybody, wherever they are, whatever platform, whatever device they're using. So Microsoft, of course, Windows is super important to us, but it's not just about Windows anymore. And finally, we also have a lot of things to offer Android developers. We have, you might have heard of a product called Xamarin. It's a partner product that allows you to bring C# to iOS and Android, lets you share anywhere from 70, 80, 90% of your code across platforms, purely native. We also have something you might have heard of, Project Astoria, also known as the Windows Bridge for iOS, that basically lets you bring your Android code, your APKs, adapt the APIs to drop the Google stuff and replace them with Microsoft APIs so that you can build a Windows app using your Java code and Android Studio. So that's something that's not available publicly yet. It's going to go in preview soon enough, and you can check that out. The third one is Azure. Basically, it's our cloud platform. It's top cloud platform in the world across IaaS, PaaS, and we have services for basically everything. More than, it's not just about virtual machines, for example, like Amazon, or it's not just about websites. It's about everything. And I'm going to show you a tiny sliver of Azure today and what you can use it for in your apps. And of course, all these SDKs can be used as Android developers using either Java or C#. So I have a lot of content to cover today. I'm going to try to go quick on certain things. The primary things I want to cover is storage, authentication for your apps, and then notification. I probably won't have time to cover this, but I can always cover it with you after that if you want to come to our booth downstairs. So very quickly, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the cloud, why the cloud is important. Okay, you might think that you don't need to pick a cloud platform today, or that you don't need connectivity, or you can do it on your own. The bottom line is, remember this. First of all, mobile development is hard. I think we can all agree with that one, right? There's statistics that show that of the developers that want to make money, so not just those doing it for fun, but those that want to make money, 17% don't make any money at all. And I think another 18% make something like less than $100 a month, and another 20-some% on top of that make less than $500 a month. So bottom line is, there's over 52% of developers that make less than $500 a month from their apps. So this is not something you're going to quit your job over. The bottom line is, if you're going to try to build apps, it's like catching lightning in a bottle. You have to build a lot of apps. You have to build them fast. Sooner or later, one of them is going to catch on. Those that don't, you just move on and you build something else. You don't pour your blood, sweat, and tears into one project, hoping for it to catch up because maybe it won't catch on at all. So you have to be able to build fast. And if you look at just a few case studies of some apps, and these are all apps that you know very well, from WhatsApp to Twitter to Uber, and I'm not going to go in depth with those, but they all have something in common. They're all supported by a cloud backend. I mean, what's a Twitter app? A Twitter app is basically a list of tweets from different people that you follow. And what's Yelp? Yelp is a list of restaurants or bars or things like that around a certain location. WhatsApp is basically a list of chats, basically the things that people have said that you are basically in conversation with. So the bottom line is, once you know how to do a list and connect it to the cloud, you can do a lot of things, because most apps are list-based when you think about it. And there's other things, of course, like Spotify or even Fitbit. You know, they save your data in the cloud so that you can get access to your tracking info. So if you don't think you need back-end storage or anything, reevaluate your solution. Imagine that if you were to use Twitter, and the moment you install Twitter on a new app, on a new phone rather, if you had to suddenly start re-following all the people that you were following, that would be crazy, right? Of course, now you just like log in with your Twitter account and it's all saved in the cloud, and automatically your app continues. So your own app needs to do the same thing. And in the end, if we want our apps to be successful, we have to make sure that we minimize cost for them. And on average, about 53% to 62% of an app's development cost are going to be associated with infrastructure. So it's not the code that goes in your app. It's going to be either code that connects to the cloud, the infrastructure itself for the cloud, or for your own infrastructure that you're trying to build. So what you want to do is you want to minimize those costs as much as possible. And that's what I want to show you with basically using the cloud to run your applications. So using the cloud, the bread and butter is saving something in the cloud. Either the user is capturing something on their device, they want to save it, or you have information that's available to them, and then they're accessing it from the device. And our cloud offering at Microsoft is called Microsoft Azure. And now you're probably wondering, like, okay, Nick, so this is all good and fine, but your cloud is probably not free, right? You're probably going to try to sell us something. So let me ask you a question, and I want you right now to raise your hand if you recognize yourself on this slide. So are you a tech entrepreneur? Are you an owner? Keep your hand up, okay? Just keep, are you a developer? Someone maybe who has a day job but builds apps on the side. Or maybe an independent mobile app developer, or a game developer, or a website designer. So most of you are raising your hands, hopefully. The other ones, I hope you're not too shy. The bottom line is, if you raise your hand, you can qualify for tons of free software from us. Okay, you can come see me at the booth afterwards. I can basically give you over $100,000 worth of software and cloud services for your startup or for your business or for your app, completely for free for 3 years. Which means that there's a free tier in all this stuff that I'm going to show you today, but even if you were to go beyond that free tier, you can actually get free credits for that, which can sustain your business for a very long time. And by the time you start busting through those limits, you will have so many users that you will be able to monetize it. And if your project doesn't work out, you can reapply for the next project. So I'll leave that here for now. The bottom line is, everything I'm showing you today is either free, or I can give you credits so that it can be free. And that's for 3 years. And usually in 3 years, you know if your project is going somewhere. So that's BizSpark, that's the name of the program. Come see me at the booth afterwards. There's a lot of different cloud computing models. I'm not going to go in depth here because that takes a bit of time. The bottom line is, there's the classic infrastructure as a service, which means you get a virtual machine in the cloud, and then you do whatever you want with that virtual machine. This is where Amazon kind of reigns king. They've made their name with VMs in the cloud. The problem with VMs in the cloud is that there's still a lot of work that you have to do yourself. That's all the blue stuff that you have to manage yourself. Platform as a service is where it really is at for developers, because developers don't want to manage virtual machines. They don't want to manage access control lists and middleware, and then they don't want to manage patching a server or anything like that. That's why, for example, Heroku became popular, because it was much easier to build a website with a Heroku compared to building it straight on Amazon. Well, Azure has services like Amazon, Azure has services like Heroku, and like Parse, and like Firebase. We have all of that in one giant offering that's got more services than all of the others. And we have more data centers worldwide than Amazon and Google combined. And it's all enterprise grade, but it's also priced at a tier where even startups and independents can use it. So let's start talking specifics now of what does it mean for an app developer. An app developer is going to use something called our app services. Our app services are going to be either for web development or for mobile apps. Today I want to focus primarily just around mobile apps. But of course you could use this for web as well, or for the website of your app. And a mobile app is basically, think about it where, first of all, from a client point of view, you need to have an SDK for everything. You don't want to have to choose like a certain platform and then later being locked out because the other platform is not supported. So we cover Android, we cover iOS, we cover PhoneGap, Cordova, all the Windows platforms as well. So it's definitely all there. We have, for example, some of our competitors in this field. They'll give you SDKs for iOS and Android, but they won't give you SDKs for Windows. And you might say, well, you know what, who cares about Windows, right? Well, remember, Windows is not just about the phone. Windows now is one platform for everything. And we just announced we have, after only 4 weeks, 75 million devices running Windows 10. All these users have the store. And we're going to hit 1 billion in the next 2 to 3 years. That's our prediction, and so far we're going to beat that prediction. So you're not going to want to ignore those users. And if down the road you suddenly realize, oh wow, Windows is popular, maybe I should reach out to those users. But then, oh, but the cloud platform I'm using doesn't support Windows, so what do I do? And we're not telling you to choose Windows over anything else. We're telling you that we support iOS and Android and Windows and the web and everything. And then the 3 types of services you're going to care about that I'm going to demonstrate to you. The first 2 I'm going to demonstrate is basically data storage, where you have some data, you want to save it in the cloud. Whether it's a weather app that you want to save the favorite cities of a user, or whether it's a chat app where you want to save the history of chats, you need to be able to save your stuff in the cloud. Authentication is going to be super important. And as you know, the last thing you should do is build your own authentication scheme, because the last thing that people need in the world is another set of username and password to remember. And if your app forces them to create a username and password, you've lost them. Most users will not even get past the login screen. So congratulations, you got them to install the app. Now they're going to uninstall it or forget it. You want to authenticate with a common scheme that is popular. With Azure, you can authenticate, and I'll show you, with 1 line of code, you can actually authenticate with Google ID, with Twitter, with Facebook, with Microsoft ID, and also Active Directory, which is essential for enterprise applications. So if your user doesn't have any of those, I don't know where they are, because they've been living under a rock or something. And then finally, there's push notifications. Push notifications is where now the server needs to reach out to the device and push something out there. So who uses push notifications in their apps today? So who thinks that push notifications are super easy to develop for? Yeah, it's hard in general. And it's actually much, much easier with Azure because we actually support Google Cloud Messaging, Apple Push Notification Service, and Windows Notification Service. Heck, we even support Amazon Messaging Service for like the 4 people that have a Fire phone. So it's, yeah, definitely. So we support all those platforms out there. Now, when you create a table, and then after that I'll jump into only demos for the rest of the session. When you create like want to store something in the cloud, ultimately all you want is a table. You say, I just want a table in the cloud where I can go save some records in my table. It's going to be NoSQL access over REST. Any language that can speak REST over HTTP, passing JSON data is going to be able to talk to it very easily. And then you'll be able to do your typical like CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete. And then you could do it all from a URL, but of course we give you an SDK to do this like super easily. And so that means that if you want to create something in the cloud, it's going to be as simple as, and my next step was to go into demo mode. So the first step is you go to the Azure portal. So the first thing you would do is to learn more about these things, you would go to azure.com. And hopefully the web cooperates with me here. So we've got this beautiful, friendly web page that's going to greet you here with like a nice data center with curved walls. I don't know about you, I've never seen a data center with curved walls before. I think this is actually from our Death Star server. So, and then we have, from here you can go to documentation, you can apply for a free trial. So anybody can go in with a free trial that's going to give them $200 of free credits for a month. But as I said, if you're an independent app developer, a startup, a moonlighter, I can actually give you $150 per month for 3 years. And you can do a lot of stuff with that, seriously. And that's per user. Your startup can have up to 5 users. So that's basically $750 a month of Azure credits that I can give you. And if you think that that's not going to take you far because maybe, I don't know, we're expensive, we're actually either the same price or cheaper than Amazon on everything. Every time they adjust their price, we adjust ours. We will never, ever be beaten on price. So your credits can take you very far with that. Now, from there, you can log into the portal. The portal is you log in with a Microsoft account, and this is where you see all the different services that are available. We have 2 versions of the portal today. We have the current portal, and we also have a new portal that's in preview. I'm going to show you the current portal because there's the one feature I want to show you today that is not yet available in our new portal. It's because when you create a mobile service, a mobile service is going to be that entity that you create in the cloud. It's going to be the backend for your app. Typically, each app should have its own mobile backend and therefore its own mobile service. In a mobile service, you'll have storage, you'll be able to do authentication, and you'll be able to do push. So to create a new mobile service, for example, you click here, you see there's a little phone, and then you would click new, and then mobile service, you click create, and then you get this nice interface right here. You just give a name to your mobile service. Every name needs to be unique. So in this case, it could be the name of your app and the name of your company. And the internal URL is always going to be like something.azure-mobile.net. And by the way, something is taken. I took it. So I was curious to see if it was free, and I tried it once, and yeah, it was free, so I took it. Then the table you're going to get is actually going to be a NoSQL table, but under the hood, it's actually going to be saved in a SQL database. But you don't see that. It's all like obfuscated away from you. If you want to get access to it, you can, but you don't have to worry about that. If you have more than one subscription like me, you would pick your subscription. You pick the home region for your service. So there's always like different data centers. You simply pick which data center is going to be your home center. It's available across the world, and after that you can set geo-replication so that you can have copies in other data centers, of course. As I said, in terms of data centers worldwide, we're up to 18 or 19 data centers today. That's more than Amazon and Google combined in terms of number of data centers. And then finally, this is the important one. You have to pick a backend. The backend is going to be which technology are you going to be using in the cloud to script your behavior. So a lot of features you're going to get for free without any scripting whatsoever. But if you want to do special operations every time a record is being inserted, or every time somebody does read something, or every time you want to push notifications, or you want to do a backend job, in that case, you have to choose between either a JavaScript backend, which is Node.js, or a .NET backend, which is ASP.NET Web API. For this audience here, I imagine you guys probably prefer JavaScript more, so that's why I decided to show you the JavaScript side today. Hence the title of this talk, which is building a Node.js backend for your mobile apps. So you go through this, you have to give it a name. It takes a couple of minutes to create it. I'm just going to show you, once you have a service created, you're going to be greeted with this page right here. It's going to say, your mobile service was created. Once your mobile service is created, you then have to connect your client application to it to basically communicate and save data in the cloud. Using this, we actually give you these little code snippets or pre-made applications you can download and that are pre-wired to your service. And look at the choice here. You say choose a platform: Windows, iOS, Android, HTML, Xamarin, or PhoneGap. So for example, if you're a Xamarin developer, you would come here. You can then pick Xamarin, iOS, or Android. In your case here, you would come to Android. And then you can do two things. You can say either connect an existing Android app, and then when you connect an existing app, and I apologize for, I know it's a little small, the screen is not huge, but you basically, it tells you how to create, for example, download Android Studio, download the mobile services SDK, which is an SDK for Android developers, and then it just tells you exactly which code is required, like which permission is required, how to import Microsoft Windows Azure.mobile services, and then instantiating a mobile service client. And then finally, in one line of code here, we can connect to our mobile service client. And there's this weird key here that appears. If you want to know where that key is, you just click on Manage Keys at the bottom, and it's going to show you your application key. No pictures, please. That's my key. So you can always regenerate the key if your key becomes compromised. So that means that in your app, you can basically then connect to the mobile service with that key, And now you have a client object that is connected to your cloud. And then from there, you can access tables. Now, the next thing you'll need, of course, is a table of some kind. So to create a table, you would just say create new, no, sorry, not this, right here. You click the create button right here. You give your table a name. And then after that, you say, what are the permissions for this table? The base permission is everyone. Never use this, ever. Okay? You should always go at least with anybody with the application key will be able to post. That's the default. Or you can go authenticated users, and I'll show you authenticated users. But let's say by default, it's anybody with the application key. So I have a table here called to-do item. The default little program that we give you out of the box is basically a to-do list application. As I said, once you know how to build a list and connect it to the cloud, you can build so many things. I once built a chat software, a chat client, cross-platform for iOS, Windows, and Android, simply using this sample by retrofitting it and using push notifications, just because I wanted to prove that I too could build a chat software that's worth $19 billion like WhatsApp. And I did it in 6 days. So it's super easy to build. So my to-do item table right now, you can see, has a few records already inserted. Those are records that I've inserted before. By default, your table would be empty. The thing also is, if you create a brand new table, typically that table is going to have like no schema. You know, like when you do database development, you have to create a table and then you have to say, what is the schema of my table? What are the columns and everything? You don't even have to do that, because there's a cool feature in the mobile service that is called dynamic schema, which is going to be enabled by default. So that means the moment you take a JSON object and you pass it over to the mobile service, it will automatically create the columns for that row according to the schema of your JSON object. And you can disable this, of course, if you want, but you don't really need to. You can leave it on during development and turn it off in production, because you would not expect to get new types of objects after production starts unless you add new features. So now, what you do is there's the little cloud right here, you can actually click on it. And that takes you back to this front page. So if you say, if this is the first time you're using mobile services, my advice to you is say, create a new Android app. You click the create to-do item table, it will automatically create that table for you. And then you click download, that gives you a zip file. You download the zip file, it's an Android project for Android Studio. You open it up in Android Studio and you can immediately hit build and run it. And it is pre-connected to your cloud. And it's going to look like something like this right here. So I don't know if you guys can see this. It's a little small, I know. I'm just going to show you the quick structure, and then I'll jump into presentation mode so you can see the code a little better. So in this project, I have my main activity, of course, which is my to-do activity. I have my to-do item. My to-do item is basically just a public class that has a string for text, a string for ID, and then a Boolean flag, which is complete or not. Since it's a to-do list, we determine, of course, if the item has been completed or not. And then finally, we have an adapter so that we can do data binding directly with our list inside of the app. What I'm going to do is concentrate a little more on, actually, let me show you what it looks like first. Before I show you some code, let me show you what the project looks like. So I'm going to hit run, and what I'm going to use here, actually, so who has actually come to the Microsoft booth so far? Okay, so half of you. The other half, you might want to come see this. We have a new emulator for Android. It runs on Windows only for now because it uses Hyper-V. It's fully accelerated. It's extremely fast, loads fast, executes even faster than some other third-party emulators, let's just say. On top of that, it supports multiple images, multiple versions of Android and API levels. And then it gives you ability to test location services, accelerometer input. So you can do things like, for example, opening up the options, and you can test the accelerometer with the emulator, and it's going to rotate and everything. You can test location routes. Anyway, come to our booth. We can give you a full demo of this emulator. So because it's a standard Android emulator, it plugs directly into ADB, which means it's going to be automatically detected right here by Android Studio. So I'm going to say click run, deploy to it. And you saw how fast that showed up. I mean, once it's loaded, it takes, on my machine, this is a Core i7 with 8 gigs of RAM. It loads in less than 30 seconds from scratch, that emulator. And once it's loaded, you saw it's like instant that it shows up. So this is my to-do list app. I have a bunch of to-do items already in here, like register for BizSpark and download the VS emulator. And then, for example, I've posted the slides already from my talk on SlideShare, so I could say download the slides from SlideShare. And then I click add, and it basically gets added to my to-do list. And if I come here in the backend, and I go to my data table, and I look at my to-do item, there used to be 5 records, now there are 6 records. So it says right here, download the slides. So the people in the front row can probably vouch to this being the right text. I'm sorry guys, but it's kind of small. All right, now in terms of the code to get this enabled, it's very simple. What I'll do is I'll come here and show you the main activity for it. Let me go into presentation mode. That might help a bit. Is this a little better to see code, right? Okay, cool. So we have our activity, we have our mobile service client. That's an object that comes from the Azure SDK. And then we have a mobile service table, another object from our mobile SDK, which is of type to-do item, which is part of that other class we declared already. Then right here in the onCreate, we're doing mClient equals new mobile service client with the URL of our mobile service client and our application key. Okay, so that's creating, now we're connected over there. Then we call create table here. Create table, all we do is simply off of the mobile service client, we say get table for the to-do item.class. And then now we have a table. And then after that, we go find our view, we create our item adapter, and we can immediately take the table and use it as a data source for the list that we have in our UI. Then after that, if you want to do things like getting access, let me just show you here. For example, to add an item to the table, it's simply a matter of creating a new to-do item, setting the text property, setting the complete flag to false, and then from there, we simply call add item in table. And add item in table is one line of code. We simply say to-do table.insert with the item, and that's it. So one line of code to connect to the cloud, couple lines of code to create the object, and one line of code to actually add it to the cloud storage up there. And then after that, you can refresh your items from the table by saying a list of to-do items is going to be a refresh item from mobile service table, which is down here. It's again one simple line of code where you say to-do table where field complete equals false, and then execute the request. And now you've got all the records coming back from the cloud. So with just a few lines of code here and there, you've now connected your app to the cloud. You can save stuff in the cloud. You can update records. You can go retrieve all of those records. Now it's secure in the sense that only those with the application key can connect. But then you might say, well, what if I want to have authentication for this? Well, for authentication, this is where it's super easy. I'm going to exit the presentation mode on this. And if I go, I'm going to use, for example, since I like to write cross-platform apps, like Google ID is kind of associated with Android, Microsoft ID is associated with Windows. I like to use Twitter as an authentication method. As I said, we support Google ID, Microsoft ID, Twitter, Facebook, and Active Directory, which is for Windows domains. Very popular in the enterprise. So what you do is you come on your mobile service right here, you come to the identity section. And in the identity section, this is where you're going to go plug in your client IDs and secrets of the various authentication schemes that you're using. So for example, right here, I've got Twitter settings. I have an API key and an API secret. If you've ever used Twitter, you know you simply go to the apps.twitter.com, you log in with your Twitter account, you create an app, you give your app a name, and then ultimately, you've got different settings, like you can set an icon on it, and then in my settings, I've checked the options to say that I allow this application to be used to sign in with Twitter. The callback URL is always going to be the name of your mobile service URL, which is mobiledemosjs.azuremobile.net/login/the login provider, like /Twitter, /Google, /Facebook. And then you go to your keys and access token page, and then you will see that you'll have your consumer key and your consumer secret. You take those two values that were generated by Twitter, and you come and copy paste them right here. Once you've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to revoke my token right now. And I'm going to say Droidcon to-do list. I'm going to revoke access right now. So this way it's like I've never logged in to this app. Okay? So now I have not gained any access. And in my code, let me show you how simple it is to authenticate someone. See, normally you would have to show the pop-up and everything and do the callback. Our API and our SDK does all of this for you. So what I'm going to do here is I go back up to our onCreate method. Let me just actually go up to, and again in presentation mode, so you guys can see this a little better. All right, so up here, where is it? All right, there you go, right here. So create table, I'm going to uncomment the authenticate here, and I'm going to comment create table, because authenticate, once we're authenticated, we'll call the create table. Authentication, look at this, okay? We have a listenable future of type mobile service user, and then we simply call, on the mobile service client, we simply call login, and then we say mobile service authentication provider dot Twitter, or that could be dot Facebook, dot Google, dot Microsoft. One line of code. That one line of code will pop the UI, asking the user for credentials. Once they're successfully logged in, asking them if they want to grant permission to this application, and then once it's done, do the callback and return all the results to your app. One line of code. This is from the SDK here. This is not like some code snippet hidden somewhere. Okay? And now, after that, I can simply come to see if I have a success, and if I have a success, I show a dialog that says you're now logged in with the, I get the user ID, which is my Twitter ID number. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to get out of presentation mode, save this, I'm going to run this in my emulator. Okay, it's asking me to which emulator I want to use. This device is running here. Okay, so it's going to load right here. Now you see the pop-up comes. You have to give it a second. Sometimes it depends also on the connection speed here. I've noticed that the network here is a little iffy, and I've had issues before. There we go. So in this case, I was already signed in on this device. So I should have cleared all the cache. Normally it would have asked me for my credentials first. I log in, and then I can say authorize Droidcon to-do list to use your account. I'll click sign in, and then the moment it's done, it says success, you're now logged in. Well, the whole pop-up thing you saw there, that was that one line of code that did it all for you, completely out of the box. And you can actually easily add multiple authentication schemes to your app if you want. So you can give the user a choice. Do you want to log in with Facebook or Twitter or something else? You know, so this way you maximize your chances that you will hit an authentication scheme that they're already using. And then once I'm here, I can actually successfully save. Of course, in this case, what I would have to do first to make sure that that I'm forcing people to authenticate is on the table itself, I would basically have to also switch to say, in my permissions, I now have to say for all the different permissions, it's only going to be authenticated user that can actually connect to this. So now I'm going to say only authenticated user for all different levels. Only authenticated users. I hit save. And now at this point, my service will never allow anybody to read, update, delete, or insert unless the user has actually been authenticated. Let's bear with our Wi-Fi here. Okay. And then, now, if I go here and I say I want to add another one, and I say, for example, follow at ActiveNick on Twitter. You can all do that right now. And then click add. Hopefully the @ sign didn't screw up anything, but it should go safe properly. The service has been refreshed on the server, so the first time can take, there you go, follow ActiveNick on Twitter. And then of course, once we do something, we can say, for example, I've already visited the Microsoft booth, I'm going to check it here, and then that item disappears from the to-do list because we've already done it. So now I can come to my mobile service table, I go browse the content, and I can see that follow ActiveNick on Twitter has been added, and visit the Microsoft booth has been set to true. Again, just a few lines of code here and there to enable this. So now, that means that with very little effort, with virtually no cost, you've now enabled your app to connect to the cloud. You have a world-class infrastructure. If your app doesn't succeed, it didn't cost you anything. If your app goes crazy popular and it goes viral, the last thing that you want is for suddenly your backend to crumble because you cannot support your own success. And you basically have a cloud platform that can scale all the way to like the level of Fortune 500 companies with this. And in terms of cost with this, just to give you an idea, there's a free tier here. So even if you don't enroll in our BizSpark program, the free tier gives you access to 500,000 API calls per month on 500 active daily devices and 1 million push notifications. If you stay within those caps, it is completely free to use. And then for 15 bucks a month, you now have unlimited devices, 1.5 million API calls per month, and 10 million push notifications. And hopefully, if you have that level of usage, you've monetized your way to be able to afford 15 bucks a month. But even then, with the credits that I give you, you can just use those credits that are completely free for your first 3 years. And once you start using more than $750 a month of Azure, you've got a nice success on your hands. So it's a good problem to have. So that's basically what I want to show you guys today. To jump ahead right here. So we have a lot of resources that are available to you online. My deck is already posted on my SlideShare. I'll give you the link at the end. We got a lot of cloud resources for cloud developers. You've got the trial you can use. You can sign up for BizSpark. Come see me if you're interested. If you want to learn more about Microsoft technologies, we have our own build conference that happened last April. All the sessions are available online. So Microsoft Build is like what I/O is to Google, for example. It's the developer conference. We also have an online training site. So if you love to learn new technologies, it's not just from Microsoft Techs. It covers a lot of wide range of things. We have an online, like basically classroom, an online training center that is completely free with hundreds and hundreds of classes that you can watch at your own pace online, fully free, whether you want to learn cloud development, web development, game development even, or mobile development or infrastructure or anything like that. I've recorded a course there as well. So that's basically what I want to tell you about today. My SlideShare is slideshare.net/ActiveNick. So the slides that I just showed you here are already posted right there. I've got demos on my GitHub at github.com/ActiveNick. Like I have the chat program I was telling you about. I've actually created and posted this last year. It's still an Eclipse project though. I haven't had a chance to migrate it to Android Studio yet, but it's available for iOS, for Xcode, and for Eclipse for Android developers, and also for Windows and Visual Studio. So follow me on Twitter at ActiveNick. I'm going to be at the Microsoft booth for the rest of the day. I hope this was useful for you guys, and if you're interested in getting free software and free cloud, come talk to me after this, and I'll be more than happy to review your startup or your project and get you pre-approved. So thank you very much for coming, guys. So I will move out so I can leave room for the next speaker coming. So.